Hey, how you doing? My name is Lachlan Watt, and music is my life. This week's guest is a Melbourne artist known as MUDRAT. He's had an unusual journey from a solo hip-hop artist into something more akin to like a fully collaborative punk metal crossover band that's still very much rooted in his hip-hop sound. First came to my attention with this track he dropped in the wake of October 7. He's been pumping out politically charged bangers that really scratch the itch of raging discontent with the world ever since. The latest one is called You Don't Care About Poor People. Here's a little taste of that one. Now, I hate to be the tradesman complaining about my tools 2 weeks in a row, but the hardest part about getting this podcast up and running has been getting all the tech to run smoothly. It's not always going to plan, so if you're watching on YouTube, apologize for the slight drop in quality on this one, but I enjoyed the chat that took place in MUDRAT's studio a lot and didn't want to let it go to waste. My name is Lachlan Watt, music is my life, and now I give you my conversation with MUDRAT. So I didn't actually plan on this being on day after the election.
Yeah. Ironic.
How are you feeling about the results?
Yeah, I think it's part of this process has been having to acknowledge the person that I was last time around, and
it's a person that voted for Albo directly.
It is, and it's also a person that shed a tear during his fucking his inaugural speech. And I my partner texted me while I was here at the studio last night, and I think I responded with like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I saw the Dunlussy seat, and that's pretty fucking funny. But yeah, I think it's hard to feel too. I guess I'm like optimistic, but at the same time, it's disaster averted. We might briskly stride towards our doom instead of getting in a bloody bullet train and driving straight for it. So yeah, that's basically my vibe.
Yeah, Dutton losing was definitely delicious, but I was pretty disappointed to see the Greens relatively tanking across the board. Like, not a disaster for the Greens, but not really progress.
Yeah, I think they need to have a pretty good look at themselves in terms of like what they're actually like representing and what they're standing for. Because they've come a long way since the initial, I guess, presentation of just being an environmental party. But yeah, I think obviously Dutton not winning is good, but the lack of minority parties to, I guess, hold Labor accountable is going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about it until last night because I'm just basically a rusted on Greens voter.
Yeah,
I know that their core values align with mine, but you kind of think about it and you're like, what was their campaign? What were they promising? And it's like you look back at it and it's just like, help us make sure that Dutton doesn't win. Like, help us make Labor do something. And you're like, well, you're basically saying you may as well vote Labor, right?
Yeah. I think there's something to both the Liberals and the Greens not necessarily having an identifiable, I guess, like what they're about. I think it says something about the right, almost like there's this whole woke right thing going around, and the same things that you criticise supposed woke left of not necessarily like having any kind of grounding in reality. I think it's applying across the board, and it's interesting times because you would have thought based off the world events of the last few years that there would have been some swing towards more left alternatives, but here we are, more of the same.
I think people like Australians obviously didn't want mini Trump, but at the same time they by and large don't really want woke woke politics to dominate, which was, I think, obvious in the fact that I think the Greens clued onto that and didn't. It was probably the least woke, I guess, campaign the Greens have ever had. But I guess you can't really wash that off, and they didn't really offer up much else to sort of say, hey, this is a reasonable alternative.
I mean, they tried with the military $4 billion thing, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to know that there was an alternative out there. But I do think there's probably something that the working class struggles to identify with in most, just through the ways that the Greens are presented. And I hope that there is a bit of a, I guess, realignment with that ideal of trying to appeal to, I guess, the everyday lower middle class sort of working person, because I don't know if we'll see what happens, but I'm not quite sure if Labor necessarily serves the interests of the average person anymore. But there's nothing there to fill the gap, and so we are.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll just wait and see. But the main reason, I suppose, one of the reasons that I was excited to chat to you on the podcast is Andor.
Yep.
We were saying before you're only up to the first 3 episodes of the new season.
Yeah. I have watched season 1 3 times now, and the last time I brought my partner and a friend in on the process, which now I'm regretting because it means I have to move at a rate of 3 people instead of 1. But we were able to catch up.
Nice.
So, yeah, for anyone that doesn't know and that is interested in trying to figure out how to radically shift things in a better direction, I think the show has all the answers. So I think if most just activists get on that show, obviously, illegally stream it, Disney. But outside of that, it's a show about how the actual rebellion got started in Star Wars, and I think there's like so many just quotable bangers that I'm just like fist pumping to dialogue.
Every character gets a inspiring monologue at some point.
Yeah, but they somehow what's happening now. I've watched it like so many times over, but it just doesn't ever feel out of place, and I'm just there for it every single time.
Yeah, I think I've watched the first season probably like maybe 4 or 5 times now, and it's just every time I watch it just gets better.
Yeah,
I pick up on more stuff.
Yeah. What's why do you love it so much?
Just I think it's Star Wars made with like proper love and care, and just properly written characters, and just adult themes, and just like Shakespearean level dialogue. Just like lifelong Star Wars fan, and Mandalorian was super cool the first couple of seasons, and then just really hasn't been much else of the Disney era that's kind of, especially the shows that have actually landed for me since then.
Yeah, I think it's like, obviously other things add to lore naturally, and like a lot of the Filoni stuff is like, that's his main kind of thing, is to bring expanded universe stuff into the, but I think like truly this is the only thing post George that has now, like, you will watch the OT and the rebellion would
carry so much more weight.
Yeah,
now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just got groundedness in like we know how they got there, whereas it was just it was already done, and then Luke just jumps in and is the final piece in the puzzle. So
he gets to be the White Knight.
Yeah. No, I am very happy as a Star Wars tragic that a spin-off of a spin-off actually.
I had the thought recently that it's like my new favorite Star Wars trilogy is Andor season 1, Andor season 2, and Rogue One.
Yeah, I can buy into that. But yeah, I don't know if we'll get much else after this. So I'm savoring each moment as it comes. I wish they did it over 3 seasons. Having watched this, like, obviously it's exciting that they're moving through a year in each sort of episode. But I think I just want as much of it as possible. And yeah. But I'm grateful for what we've got.
Well, I guess maybe we should talk about some music. So tell us about the genesis of MUDRAT.
and your background in music and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, sick. MUDRAT is a complete accident that has somehow managed to carry on for like a year and a half since it begun.
How was it an accident?
So I guess context, the whole origin story is probably relevant to a degree. But I've been releasing music since 2017 under a previous alias as like strictly hip hop, and had a EP launch in 2021 and had a COVID sellout. So that was cool to just brandish as a sellout, but it was 150 tickets as opposed to a 300 venue, but. It was, that was a lot of work to get to just that point. But I knew that I had quite a ways to develop, I think, as an artist. And so I went searching for the next evolution. And I'm sure it's all part of the journey of kind of like being in points of confidence that like what you can currently make with your skill set, and then trying to develop, and that's the points where you doubt yourself because you're trying things out of your comfort zone. But I essentially pushed it too far and did not know how to finish. I didn't write a song for basically 2 years because I was trying to make things that were. I was really trying to sing, and I could only sing to a very sort of basic standard at that time. And then I just kind of like, it was COVID, so there was no ability to go to gigs and get inspired, and I just had no idea what I was doing. The MUDRAT stuff just started as a bit of a throwing shit at the wall and kind of just seeing what stuck. And I'd always been around musicians from, I guess, the punk and metal scene. Emil, who is the drummer in the band, but in the group's sort of current evolution, writes everything. There's like founding member of Ocean Grove, and that's always just been his world. And we just sort of, out of like not knowing how to do music, just started to muck around, and I started to rap in my accent and use my actual voice in terms of my chest and all that sort of stuff. And it eventually kind of just clicked, but then the genocide started, and I wrote a song because that's what musicians do when they don't know how to make sense of shit, and put that on TikTok, and that blew up, and we launched the project like 6 months before we were ever planning to, just based off that. And it's sort of just been a thing of figuring it out as we went from there. And that's basically how it started, and it's something that I've had to make sense of as we went in terms of like what I was trying to do with the project. But
so the previous material, like the hip hop stuff, wasn't politically charged at all?
No, not really. Like I've always created from a place of like deep introspection, as I've just been in therapy since I was like 17. So it's always been about like there was some sort of idea of like trying to make something for um, people in order to try and like move the world into a better place, but it was never as on the nose, I guess, as it's been. And part of the MUDRAT, I guess, process is that like I've been politicized. I've personally become politicized as the project has gone on, and I think a lot of it is, it's almost like the music's obviously critical to it, but I guess the way I sort of see it at the moment is I'm trying to like live an example of someone that I guess tries to figure out the world around them and tries to uh, live an existence that isn't completely centered around my own experience. And
Yep.
that means like figuring it out in front of a bunch of people, which is kind of scary. But I think that there's something in that. Maybe there's a lot of like hypotheses of like what I'm trying to do with it, and I think they're all doomed to fail. But I am just trying to figure it out. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't, then we'll probably just like end up getting hated and cancelled, and yeah.
So when I did see you play, like, I think it was last year, you played, guess it was like the album that's on its way, right? And it was like, you talked about how it was set up as a journey from, someone, like the first song is like, bit sort of ignorant, and then it's a journey of political awakening and radicalization.
Yeah, which is essentially the journey that I've been on. And, I'm not the most, I've done a lot of learning. I'm not the most theoretically smartest person that should be, people should be learning from. I'm not the best musician. I'm not anything, but I think the thing that I learned how to do in my 20s was like lead with vulnerability just in all parts of my life, and disarm just humans in general, just by the notion of like honesty and just being like, this is where I'm at. And that takes a lot of that took that decade of therapy to kind of get to that point. But I think there's the politics of it all is obviously important, but I think really it's just about trying to show the process of like what it actually takes to like rewire the way that you think about the entire world.
Do you think the messaging of the more politically charged music has helped rewire things for some people? Do you get much feedback on that?
It's tough, right? Because very quickly you learn that like we made the song Rich Cunts, which was like authentically that's just how I was feeling in that moment. But I think part of this process and part of the like, I guess what is essentially this like experiment that we're trying to live out is just trying to be as actively aware of everything you're doing as you're doing it. So we put that song out, that got a lot of good feedback, but then I very quickly learned that, okay, you can say the things that people are already feeling, and there's something to that. There's something to creating a catharsis for people that are already there.
Yeah.
And then there's
the idea. I felt when I first heard it. I was like, fuck yeah! Like, finally, there's someone kind of just like calling it how it is.
Yeah.
When most bands are just not saying anything about what's going on politically in this country.
Yeah. Like I guess to answer your question the short way, like I do. I think it's way slower than anyone wants, but there's a really cool thing that we're going to try put in the project where I won't give too much away, but like we essentially captured this like conversation with somebody that we, on first glance, did not ever expect to go the way that it did. And then it was essentially like an affirmation of everything we've been trying to do. He like named the song titles without like knowing anything about it. And we were like, well, that was like, I've had to like allow a little bit of like woo in my life in terms of just like things are happening for a reason.
Cosmic forces.
Yeah, but I think it felt like one of those, like,
right.
And so, I do. I am. I'm not someone that blindly just believes, which is, I think, a strength to the project. But there are things that are, like, there are conversations that I've been having with like people. I've gone back to like the old cricket club that I used to play for, and like people ask me about socialism, and I'm like, what? Like, where did you pick that up? And I do think that as a reflection of the times, like things are getting, like late stage capitalism is in our timeline. Like we are here. So naturally people's lives are going to get harder and harder, and they're going to look for alternatives. And I think it's the role that artists play is to just sort of like be the first gateway to that knowledge. But it is going to be way slower than most people that are actively committing their lives to that space want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've attracted a bit of negative attention as well along the way in the remix of Rich Cunts, which I hadn't actually checked out until I was on the way here and thought I'd better brush up on everything and listen to the remix. And you shout out Gavin McInnes at the start.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
Yeah, so obviously being polarizing is what the algorithms want. And I just accepted very early that this is going to come with a lot of scrutiny, but I didn't expect to get to the final boss of I was like, what the fuck is happening? Gavin McInnes found the song and live streamed it on his show, and it was all about the bit was like, here's the thing, he's a fucking dickhead, but it was funny.
Which part in particular upset him?
So the entire show was all about can you get into music even if you hate what the person's saying? And it was racist as all shit. He was pulling up all sorts of artists from everywhere and of different backgrounds and just taking the piss out of them. But we came up on his radar and he played the song and then encouraged all of his followers to go and just write on all of our videos that we're proud of you, boy. And it was incessant for 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, thanks, Gavin.
So you got you a bunch of Proud Boy followers.
Yeah. So that was a bit scary at the time. You're always in this bind of being oh, this would be good for attention if we take this and publicize it. But I'm also a singular person with. At the time, I didn't even have the team that we've got now. That it's still small, but I had to just weigh up do I want to push back, knowing that I couldn't win that possibly. We weren't big enough to combat it, and that's just been a string of a whole bunch of things that have happened and just come with the territory. It hasn't gotten too...
Nothing too scary yet?
Yeah, I mean, death threats are sort of part and parcel of this shit now, but I've just I learned very quickly that poking the Twitter bear is just not worth it. Yeah. And so, people have tried to get us kicked off fucking St Kilda Fest. And
I was going to say that was my next point. You've had a bit of a Zionist organisation backlash.
Yeah, our good friends, who are inherently tied to the world of the arts, have tried to write to St Kilda Fest and tried to get us off that, but to St Kilda's credit, they held firm, and I know that some good people there, they're really staunch, and so I think a lot of it is just people just chatting shit on the internet, but I'm sure undoubtedly there will be a time when it will happen, and we've just accepted that that's part of it. And the thing is, when you have the people, you just flip it back on them. And so, should the day come that a festival wants to boot us or whatever it is, good luck to the festival.
Well, it's kind of at this point, if you're booking MUDRAT, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, but then, you'd think Coachella, you heard about kneecap and shit, so it's, you'd hope so, but we've played, I jumped up with Dancing Water last year, who are a really amazing Indigenous-led, neo-soul with punk band from Brizzy, and they were booked and they get quite staunch with it as well, and they were booked at Brunswick Music Festival and at 11 a.m. and they were 3-year-olds in the crowd as we're singing The Only Good Cop Is a Dead Cop, and the kids are just sitting in the front row dancing, and I was this is one of those where I'm I guess this is important, but...
So have your politics actually cost the band any opportunities yet?
Not yet, which has been interesting. And I think part of that is we've come at a time when the music industry is falling apart. So I think the very fact that a group has been able to organically get things moving just puts us in a position of leverage more often than not, because it's kind of, at least I know from like the hip hop world, but I guess it's across the board, like things have been pretty slow, and so I think, had this been in sort of like 2013 when things were going swimmingly, we probably weren't worth the risk. But at this point, I do think that there is leverage to be had, and so far it's been so good. And like, to be fair, like, I know macro music industry bad, but there's a lot of good people that are quite staunch in their beliefs, that are in certain positions, and so I think we're probably a few levels away before it really becomes a problem. But you saw how long Kneecap just ran it for until it, like, and they were like burning as bright as you could. So I do think that it's probably going to happen, but
because Kneecap have got like politicians calling for their music to be removed from Spotify and all that sort of shit now, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were facing like terrorism charges as well. It's just
From which countries chucking that on them?
The UK, which is
right. I must have missed that.
Yeah, so that was basically the entire reason behind the statement that they made, which has been controversial for like a lot of reasons, and not necessarily one that I have to like dissect. But it was essentially the lawyer being like, "You've got it," and I think like even the Prime Minister of Ireland was like, "You need to clarify your position, just so you've got yourself covered."
Yeah.
And then they had to essentially
say, "Hey, we're not Hamas supporters."
Yeah. Which, this is probably one that we should be careful about, but like their positions consistently have said otherwise. So, but legally, Australian government, that's
Speaking of the Australian government, I found it. Well, in hindsight, it's not so much frustrating as it is amusing, but at the time I was quite frustrated having you on Triple J, and it's not a problem to play your songs with the lyrics that they have, the very politically charged statements, but you as a person, obviously I have to flag with management who I've got coming on the show or whatever, and they were like, "Oh," and because the interview was pre-recorded, so I had to cut out you saying "Free Palestine" and like "Eat the rich" or something, or "Kill the rich," whatever it was you said.
Yeah.
And then, over the last year, they've been adding your songs to rotation on Unearthed.
Yeah.
It's curious, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this was unfortunately the position that people that just got there quicker knew was going to happen, which was when something is so obviously wrong, eventually there is like a little bit of leeway given to I guess the voices that are calling that thing out, but it's essentially just like the normalization of even with like the Oscar winning film, which history, if you look back at it on a surface level, like, oh wow, like this film about this conflict and genocide and whatever, like it won the Oscar, like that's so powerful, the power of art. But like, it's all just the system trying to, like, in 10 years time, the same with the Iraq War or whatever it is, like, oh no, we weren't really against that or whatever. But like when it comes down to actually people being brave in the moment, it's just, and that's literally been the genesis of this entire thing. Was I watched all my heroes die in front of like my eyes, because I hadn't got to that point of like recognizing like the genocide was the thing that just opened my eyes to everything, and it like was like the matrix shattering moment of like, what the West is meant to be like, meant to have like a way, like values and all this sort of stuff, and my artists, my heroes that do various things, like they have like relatively stood for like, what's Kendrick saying, and then it all slowly crumbles. And so I guess I'm hoping that the death of that means that there is a new generation of artists that come up as a response to essentially a decade where it was cool to not give a fuck about anything. And I do hope that there's some sort of, at least it's what we're trying to do, is showcase that actually like the sickest shit is giving a shit. So yeah.
But something I guess that you were talking about before, how slow the process is and how slow it is to make people sort of change and actually change the bigger picture. But I noticed you kind of maybe halfway through, I guess the last year and a half or whatever, sort of started putting more energy into like local causes and mutual aid, and just actually changing people's material conditions like within your community.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that a little bit and how you came to that understanding.
Yeah, so again, I'll probably take a long-winded approach to everything, so just feel free to I'm coming off whatever. But again, this whole thing is like, I am like, I think like most of us in the arts, like a romanticist at heart, and I like to naively believe in, things that are, a little bit more colorful than what like reality is. And so like the idea of like a powerful artist to me is like, as a kid and through most of my life, was something that I like wanted to believe in. And I know that there've been historical examples of this, but I think the way that existing in music under capitalism has shown is that like you end up being in a position of like hypocrisy, like regardless of whatever you do, either be it rage or what, like whoever has come like before us, because you essentially absolve yourself into the system for your own survival or whatever it is. And I figured very quickly that part of trying to break that cycle, which again inevitably might fail, but I hope that we give it our best shot, and then the next person picks it up and tries to be like, oh, that's where they went wrong, we'll now do this, is writing about it and speaking about it in your music is critical. That's the thing that's going to last forever. But I think it's also important to like materially, as much as you can, do the things that you're writing about. And we'll never do it as much as people that aren't doing music can do. But I think that the ability to show up and remain connected to a community whilst you're supposedly representing that community is the key thing. And obviously the more successful you get, the more you're touring, the more you lose that face-to-face connection. But yeah, we raised like, I think like over $40,000 last year as a band, just part of things that we either organised or like various causes. And it's something just as simple as like, we have like followers. So like, and I'm like good at marketing. So if we can just sort of like twist some of these things that we've gotten good at to purely serve ourselves, to kind of like redirect them to something that helps other people, we can sort of do that. And it's this thing of like, it only then means that like people just back you more. And it's a self-fulfilling thing of like, do for the community backs you, do good art, they support your art, and you just kind of keep growing that. And I hope to just try and be an example to others that like you can materially affect the world in which you're in at the moment, as well as like make things that last the test of time, so people can look back and be like, what was happening at that period of time.
So with all the different causes and people that you've raised money for, what's one or two that like really come to mind as something that you feel like you've made like a really critical difference in people's lives with through it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like the direct mutual aid that like I ran a campaign for my birthday and tried to raise $10,000 and got in touch with two young men that were based in Gaza, and just had, one was in Gaza at the time, and one was studying in Egypt whilst his family was in Gaza, and he was studying to be a doctor so he could go back, and we raised money to help him pay for his last year of uni, because he wasn't getting any income coming in from his family because they're being genocided. And the other fellow was just trying to survive in Gaza, and you build a relationship with real people, and that just like sort of, I don't know, it's one thing when you kind of engage in the cause without that like person to person interaction, but I think that specifically with the Muhammad who was in Gaza, like you raise $10,000 and it just means nothing, because like it means they might be able to eat for a few days. Like it's just that inflated, but still you have to do it. Whereas
how's he going now?
I think he's
still alive.
Yeah,
That's nice.
Yeah, he's still alive, but at least with Usri in particular, we covered his last year of his uni fees, and now he's going to be a doctor. And I think that it's just little shit like that our like artists have these gigantic platforms that like could easily challenge the systems in which that they're in, but they don't. And I know you understand why they don't, but they could. And I think that's part of the thing we're trying to do.
Well, it's really admirable what you're doing. I think people appreciate it, and kind of you can see your fan base is very, very passionate about supporting MUDRAT because you mean what you say.
Yeah, we try, but it's just people always are like asking me like, "How you doing?" or like whatever it is, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just constantly aware of every little thing I try to like the way that we present ourselves, the decisions that we make, etc., etc., etc. But I guess the bit that is like, it's why it's probably important to do these is to showcase that like you should try and I guess sort of do the things that we're trying to do, because again it also like there's an authenticity I think that then gets communicated in your music, which then people who've never heard of you then pick up on, etc., etc. But the point is that it's like it's a lot of like fucking stress and work and pressure, and I shouldn't hide that. Like that's just how it goes. But I think I still believe that music is the most important thing in the world, and in whichever way we can, we're just trying to showcase that. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
So tell us about the latest single. Is it You Don't Care About Poor People?
Yep. That just dropped last week, I think, and we had a pretty successful social media campaign with that. Surprised it's still up, but I guess
what do you think? Just the Kill All the Billionaires is going to get zucked?
I guess like so people are like commenting on the thing on TikTok, basically being like, I can't write these words. Yeah, you can put a song out about it and post it out, but as soon as I write the phrase, it just gets deleted.
It's the same thing with the Triple J thing, right?
Yeah.
It's acceptable through music.
Which is also why art is so fucking important, is that we have grey area to say these things and get away with it to some sort of degree, which is why it's important that we do. But yeah, it's a story. It's a bit of like I think I said on socials. It's a bit of a mess. I wrote it like over the course of a year. The idea essentially was like I walked in with that chorus in mind, which is just you don't care about poor people, because I grew up poor, and I think like my first like engagement in like politics when I was in my early 20s, it just seemed to be lacking that like class groundingness in it, because you're often just talking to like people that have come from pretty well-off homes, and they're engaging in other important causes, but they themselves have not had that lived experience.
They're not really recognizing the core kind of problems that everyone actually should be united about.
Yeah, or just like the ability to like understand why someone that might have a point of view that like you would classify as at any ist on the end of it, like, you know, that comes as a result of, you know, various societal factors, and the poverty is one of the biggest ones. I've been a social worker outside of work for as long as I've been doing music, and I think that's also informed, you know, a lot of how I see the world. You just got to chat to some kids and care, and everything you thought you knew just like washes away. Yeah, the initial thought was always that this was just a missing piece of the conversation, and so that's what I was trying to communicate through the characters in the first couple of verses. And then as I recognised the need for solidarity across all like class struggle, which includes the people that I was talking about, and the hypocrisy in that, I was like, do I go back and change it, or do I just sort of like leave it flawed? And then we wrote the breakdown, and then we got to the end, and the Kill All the Billionaires thing was something that I think we added within like the last 3 months, just based off Elon Musk, I think, very much. So yeah.
I feel like it kind of resonated with me, just I guess a frustration that I have with leftist politics and how alienating they can be for a lot of people. I think it sort of ties into what I was saying before about the Greens kind of losing a bit of ground. Is that people don't want to be lectured and have everything just turn into some kind of academic thing. And I think, it really gets to the point that there is a common struggle with the class and wealth thing that is actually more important than all of that shit, you know? Not to say that those issues aren't important, but I think they cloud people's understanding of what needs to happen for progressive change.
100%. I think it's like it can be such a simple conversation of because then what happens in the more radical spaces is that people deny the other issues and try to like assimilate them just into the class conversation, and that itself like isn't necessarily representative. But I just think it's like the notion of like two things being true is like, if we could all kind of get there sooner, I think like that it's just the one thing that like I think holds a lot of movements back. But yeah, you know, even in the notion of the class war stuff, like that still is flawed, because there's a notion of colonization that still exists here, and it doesn't encompass that. And so all I was trying to do is sort of show again the process of how we were like getting there. We get to a point where we're like, this is actually a pretty good position to be in, but then there's still more, and there's always more. And I think that's been a huge part of the last few years, is just like accepting that I'll always not know enough, but still try. So yeah, let's get the class war cooking, and hope we don't get in any trouble for that. We're releasing some merch tonight. No, actually, I'm sure this is coming out, but we'll have some Kill All the Billionaire shirts out with Elon Musk's head on the back with a crosshair on his head, and we're partnering with the Indigenous studio in Fitzroy that is completely community run. So yeah, just trying to do what we can.
So all these tracks, are they all going to be part of this album? You're just drip feeding it?
Yeah.
What's the plan with it all?
Doing it in a way that I really don't like. Like I want to be a just drop the album type person, but also accepting the reality of like the world that we're in, and just short form content, and just you know. So the first, I kept calling it a project, but we keep adding to it. So it's an album, but I want the album to be like the next one. But it just will be. So yeah, it's called Social Cohesion, and I think we've got like, after this, 2 more singles and then one coming out with it, but it'll be out in like late August. I think that's a exclusive. And we'll be touring.
It'll probably be announced by the time this comes out in a month and a half or whatever.
Yeah. And we'll be touring in September. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Just headline shows or?
yeah, so we do an East Coast run, playing Northcote Social. Yep, that's what that venue's called. Yep. And that should be, hopefully some people come out and see how we go. Yeah.
So you come from a like more hip hop background, and
Yep.
you're playing a more sort of punk, hardcore oriented, like rap metal-y style, and you got guys from this band and that band sort of
Mhm.
working with you. How do you find like what the MUDRAT fan base actually looks like? Is it sort of rooted in one specific sort of crowd, or?
Nah, it's actually a complete clusterfuck of people, and I think that's my favorite bit.
Yeah.
Is we get like generations, like we've got some like staunch like aunties and grandmas like in their like 60s and stuff that come out, and I'm sure at some point we've probably got to like lock in on a sound, but like it's kind of just fun to have all these like punk and metal subgenres that we're kind of just playing with this like hip hop thing that kind of ties it all together. And yeah, there's definitely fans of like they're fans of like what we do and also the music, and then there's also fans of the music, which is just as important, because that's a gateway to the other shit that we won't not try to turn them off. But I think if they fuck with your music so much, you can be an influence. And so we did like the new metal thing with like Year of the Rat, and then a lot of the other stuff is sort of like punk influence. We've got one that's very, very Rage Against the Machine sort of coming out soon, and it's all over the shop. But we are very diverse. We get like a lot of like queer and trans folk that come through. Like obviously the boys love the hard shit as well. But it's just like it's so cool to just see a room of people that are from all different walks of life, but are there for a common reason.
Yeah, it was definitely a diverse crowd. The time I did go and see that headline show at Shopkickers.
Yeah.
You had Purple Pingers get up to do some guest vocals.
Yeah, he didn't get the senator seat, did he? No, I don't think so. But then I think he did a interview where he was like, I didn't.
I think I would have heard about it if he did.
Yeah. Not Senator Fingers, but no, Geordie's been a big supporter of ours, and obviously I think someone that is very important in this this slow but sure process towards political and social change that happens outside of Parliament.
How good would it have been if it was like actually Senator Pingers?
One can hope. Maybe next time.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. But he just did not give a fuck like through the entire thing, which was just so sick to see. And then I saw him say yesterday that they were like, "Did you think you were going to win?" He was like, "No, like it's been a red scare that's happened in this country for the last 6 years. We're just trying to build a profile to then make sure that like we can
try
influence
and get the message out there."
Yeah. So yeah, he's jumped up on stage with us a few times. He's a musician himself as well, so it's been cool to do some stuff with him. I'm sure we'll do some shit in the future as well. Yeah.
Do you have any big plans for future music videos and things for the album?
Yeah, we want to do one for the current single, which I think should be pretty fun. But there's of course been things like, what was the Rage song where they all got arrested filming it out in front of the DNC or some shit like that. Like there's been chats about like just trying to find a way to perform where we shouldn't be and trying to record it and just seeing what happens with that. So
like on the steps of Parliament or something?
Yeah, or just like whatever it might be at that particular point in time. But no, there's nothing penned down for now. I think that sort of stuff, it just is reactionary based off like whatever's happening at the time. But yeah, we did do the performance at the rally last year. It was like 50,000 people or something like that.
Which rally?
It was the 1 year rally since October 7.
Right.
And yeah, it was on the steps of Flinders Street, and there was just so many people.
It was on the back of a truck, or did you just find a bunch of PowerPoints on the steps or something? How does that work?
So there's this crew called, I think it's all right to say, yeah. There's a crew called Renegade Sound System, and they specialize in getting like essentially a festival set up, like
pirate gigs.
Yeah, and it's real. Like we did a show at Camp Sovereignty, a few weeks ago, and it was an amazing like standard of sound.
What's Camp Sovereignty? Sorry.
So it's a I should make sure I get this right, but so Uncle Robbie Thorpe, who's the uncle of Lydia Thorpe, but is one of the elders in Naarm. He's a staunch activist all of his life. He, I believe, in 2006 first established the camp. It's in what is called King's Domain, out in front of Sydney Mire. And I believe he, and anyone listening, look this up because I won't quite nail it, but he established the camp as a protest to the Commonwealth Games that were happening, because it is it's a sacred site that was a refuge back in the day, and there is a burial ground that was put there as like an acknowledgement of the fucking crimes that were committed on that spot. But it's essentially been reclaimed as sovereign land, and the council, on the most part, just leave him alone. And so there is this, to anyone that is in Melbourne and hasn't been there, there's basically every Sunday they have like a big smoking ceremony, and there's always people around. And there's a big Hollywood sign now that says Camp Sovereignty there. But it's essentially just a meeting like place for community, but then they'll put on their own either events or like ceremonies or whatever it might be. But yeah, it was just, we set up, there was a like festival set up that was there. We could like drive like our cars basically all the way up to the thing. Like you're in the middle of the city, you're thinking like, where's the permits? But they do respect the space, and just kind of like, it's not, the juice is not going to be worth the squeeze based off the backlash that they'd probably receive by like going and fucking with them. But there was no cops, no nothing. There was no, ridiculous oversight, and it was an incredible event. Miss Kanina headlined it with we were playing just before them. Raised $20,000 because Robbie's taking the Australian government to the International Criminal Court on genocide charges and shit. So it's like, yeah, a lot of cool stuff that is happening that I guess is probably not privy to the mainstream audience.
Yeah, I hadn't really heard about a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why you're doing what you do.
That's why we have these conversations.
But I'm interested about your background, like as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did you actually start writing music, or deciding that you wanted to get involved in being a rapper or doing hip hop or whatever it was that you got your start in?
Yeah, I guess like you just got to get deep, I guess, with this question because it is the reality. But I did not play an instrument, did not do any classes or anything like that throughout high school. I wrote poetry, as most like emo kids did, as like an entry point, and I like won like public speaking competitions, and so that was like the first time like being in front of people.
Were you on the high school debating team?
I wasn't. We didn't actually have one at ours public school. Fucking shit. No. But we did have public speaking that we had to do as part of English. But I always wanted to. I used to have this like vision of like all I wanted to do was perform at a school assembly and do a cover of like Stan by Eminem. Like I don't know why that was my life's.
Because it was a banger song back then.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's obviously still a banger song, but
yeah.
When you would have been like 14 or 15 or something, like holy shit.
Yeah.
Like you're probably a few years younger than me, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
even younger.
Yeah. No, that's all I thought. Like I just would just daydream about that all the time, and finished high school. I was very much just played sport, and that was the extent of like anything that I did. And went into the outside world, tried to do uni, flunked like 3 years of it. Was just depressed and on the verge of like ending it. And I was like, well, might as well give myself something to live for and just go for this thing that I wanted to just always do in the back of my mind, and just started to do it very, very slowly of just YouTube beats and whatever it was. And I sucked for a long time. And yeah, put out the first EP in 2017, the second one in like 2020.
What was the name of the old moniker? Like, what was the old?
Yeah, it's called Kvinyl, KVNYL. We've still got some of the. I think the last EP is still on the MUDRAT page. I've been meaning to like make a separate one, just haven't done so. But I probably will separate them at some point. But yeah, it was. You can very much just hear me figuring it out like throughout it. But we did some shit I'm very proud of. Like I made a short film for like the last EP that I did, and I think there's so many things that I figured out um, then that I did not have any, I guess, reward, or like wasn't like. But had I not made that short film, I don't think I'd be as good as doing the short form content now. Like it was just like those things where you do it, you get real no return for it, but it is just it was just that thing of like when things started to go well, and had it happened at any other point through the journey, I wouldn't have been ready. But it happened that, kind of knew who I was, had been on stage, like people have their shit blow up and don't know how to perform, and it's little things just like that we figured out through that project. And then even that period where I couldn't write a song, that had a lot of benefit. I learned music theory in that time. Like I learned how to sing a bit better, whatever it sort of was. And then I guess the point is that even in that time, I had to keep doing it, and I think that that's what's led us here. Is even when I couldn't do it, it was, I don't know, because of the reason why I started was a reason to live. I couldn't stop, and eventually it made sense. So yeah, sorry that was a bit too long-winded. Yeah.
Right. So I guess I think of MUDRAT as just you as like a solo artist, but you think of it, it's like it's become a band.
So yeah, again, that's been the process of figuring it out, like both through how we make the songs, and how we're going to be doing it. But it started off as me and a session band that just played live, but they were all my mates, and some of them were involved in like the like making of the songs. Emil in particular just like wrote and played everything, but it was all just done on the box, and there was no jamming. And it is like post this project, it will become MUDRAT and the Mischief, which will then be just like I'll maintain MUDRAT as like an entity that's, I guess, mine, because I can go and do features and whatever. But when we do things together, it will be a band. And it's like, I know every artist says this, but it's, yeah, like we've started to write music like collectively, and it's so crazy to say that like we've been in this, I guess, scene now for like I guess, yeah, a year and a bit, and like we had like our like first like jam as a band in terms of like writing things like only 2 months ago. So it's been a slow and steady process, but it is about to become a thing where we like collectively all contribute to the music going forward.
So I think the second album will be a lot different.
Oh yeah. Already it's like you're just so limited in the ways that we have been doing it, because it was a transition from hip hop where you make a beat and then you perform on a beat. You do everything within a singular session to we're now in like a hybrid between the two, where we had all the song ideas that were much more like beat oriented, and we're now like retracking and re-recording things, and that's why they do sound a bit more, I guess, like raw. and then the next orientation is going to be, I think from the little things that we've started, it's I think I hope people are gonna like who like this shit are gonna like it, but I think it's gonna just open us up to like an entire different world. It's kind of all over the shop, but like really really cool. Just like System of a Down meets like fucking the Chili Peppers sort of thing. So yeah,
nice. If I ask like what's the first piece of music that comes to mind if I ask you like what's some music that's changed your life more than any other piece of music? Like, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
Easiest To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick, because that's like my whole thing is I will like endeavor to create an album that good, and probably fall short, but that's cool. It's just the North Star. I don't think like similar to like what you were talking about Andor, of like each time you watch it, it just gives you something different. That album still feeds me like to this day, and I've listened to it 1,000 times. That's I don't think like I've always been a very like I write things conceptually like from the get go. It's a like I can only really work in bodies of work, and that is as brilliant of a conceptual piece that I think has ever been like produced in terms of things that I've heard, as well as each single like song in that being its own entity that can survive, and then let alone the music. So that's definitely been I don't like it's not sonically what we do now, but I think from like a philosophy in terms of like how to approach art, I will always like carry that with me. Yeah.
Nice. I think hip hop and like punk, hardcore have like philosophically actually got more in common than is immediately clear.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of being in a band now is like Noah, who you met just before, and our guitarist Harvey are like historians of that side of things, and so I'm getting educated as we go, and there are they be making me playlists and like the whole thing of like, wait, you haven't like heard this? Like we're about to listen to this like classic piece for like the first time, and the more that I learn, the more that I recognize that like this is probably always the space personally where I was meant to be, but the similarities between what are like anti-culture like genres is quite clear. So it's definitely been fun to just dive into a whole new world and do that for the first time as a 30-year-old.
Nice. Well, we might wrap it up there. Unless you got anything else you'd like to talk about.
No, I think that's pretty cool. We're playing Thrashville in June, so that should be a lot of fun.
It's more of a metal-leaning festival, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think about like there's a lot of punk stuff there as well, but I think it's sort of on the metal-y end of things. And catch us on tour in September. Project's out in August. Free Palestine. They don't have to cut that this time.
Yeah. Sweet. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Music Is My Life. This podcast is self-produced by me, Lachlan Watt. I'd like to thank Audio Technica Australia for providing the high-quality equipment that has made this possible, as well as Patrick Galvin at Hollowbone Studio for the design. The killer theme music that you are currently hearing was written by the legends TJ Cowgill and Sam Saljuki. Catch you in the next episode.